Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Noah had imagined 1,000 possible outcomes when he finally opened the sealed envelope Sienna left behind, but nothing in his entire life prepared him for the moment his eyes scanned those trembling handwritten lines, every word carved with the desperation of a dying woman. And as the truth unraveled before him, he burst into tears so violently that his whole body shook, his breath fractured, and the room itself seemed to tilt beneath the weight of the revelation she had carried to her grave. Nick and Sharon, who had been standing behind him for support, were stunned into a horrified silence as Noah choked out the first sentence, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it," and the sob that ripped from him was raw, primal, the kind that comes from a wound so deep that no amount of comfort could reach it. But it was only when he reached the middle of the letter that everything inside him shattered, because Sienna's last words didn't just confess love or regret, they exposed the real father of the baby everyone had assumed belonged to Noah, a truth so explosive that Sharon's knees buckled and Nick's jaw clenched in an expression of pure fury, for Sienna revealed that she had been coerced, manipulated, threatened into silence by a man far more dangerous than anyone knew, a man who had orchestrated every lie, every secret, every misdirection to protect himself, and as Noah read the name aloud, his voice cracking like breaking glass, the room filled with a suffocating stillness, because the real father was someone they all trusted, someone who had played the innocent bystander while committing unimaginable crimes behind the scenes. Sienna described how this man lured her in, how he promised protection, promised safety, promised a future, then turned on her the moment she hesitated, threatening her livelihood, threatening her family, even hinting that Noah himself would be taken care of if she dared speak a word, and she had lived in fear every single day, carrying the child of a man she despised, praying she could find a way out before it was too late, but her final days were spent not just in fear, but in guilt that she had allowed Noah to believe a lie, guilt that she had let him build a future around a child he was never meant to raise, guilt that she had watched his heart open to fatherhood while knowing that the man who created that life had done so through manipulation and cruelty. Noah's hand shook as he read on, each sentence crushing him, because Sienna had written with brutal honesty about every crime this man committed, fraud, blackmail, threats, and something darker that she could barely describe in ink, hinting at a night that changed everything, a night she begged Noah never to investigate, a night that would destroy more than it reveals. And as the ink smeared beneath Noah's tears, Nick clenched his fists, fighting the urge to storm out and confront the man whose name now echoed like poison in their home. While Sharon, trembling, covered her mouth and whispered, "Oh my God," she was terrified, realizing that Sienna never had a chance, that she had been trapped from the moment she crossed paths with him. The letter grew more frantic in tone as it neared the end, the handwriting jagged and uneven, as if Sienna had been racing against time, writing through pain, through fear, through the knowledge that someone was closing in on her, and she begged Noah to forgive her, begged him not to carry her secrets as a burden but as a warning, begged him to live in truth instead of the shadow she had been dragged into. But Noah couldn't hear anything anymore, not Sharon's calming voice, not Nick pacing behind him, not the sound of his own breath, only the crushing realization that everything he thought he knew about his relationship, about the child he believed was his, about the woman he loved and lost, was a lie crafted by a criminal hiding behind a friendly smile. But there was more, and when Noah reached the final paragraph, he froze, unable to read it aloud, so Sharon gently took the letter from his trembling hands and read it herself, and as her eyes traced the heartbreaking final message, tears streaked down her cheeks, because Sienna's last words weren't just a confession, they were a desperate plea for justice, a warning that the man responsible for all of this was planning something even bigger, something dangerous, something that could ruin the Newman family if they didn't stop him. And the final line, written messily, as if Sienna had struggled to press the pen to the paper, sent chills through every inch of Sharon's body. He said if I talked, he would make sure the Newmans paid for everything, starting with Noah, and the weight of that threat hit Nick like a sledgehammer, igniting a fury so intense that he slammed his palm on the table and vowed he wouldn't let this stand, that whoever hurt Sienna, whoever threatened his son, whoever created this nightmare, would face consequences far worse than exposure. Noah, still shaking, screamed, a broken, grief-filled sound that cracked the air, as he grabbed the letter back and stared at Sienna's handwriting, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come to me?" And Sharon wrapped her arms around him, holding him the way she had when he was a child, and nightmares kept him awake. But this nightmare was real, this nightmare had a name, and this nightmare left them with a target who was very much alive. But the storm inside Noah didn't calm, instead it intensified, because grief turned to rage, and rage turned to an uncontrollable spiral, and he bolted from the room, slamming through the front door, screaming Sienna's name into the cold air, collapsing onto the porch as Nick ran after him, begging him to come inside. But Noah couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't stop the images in his head. Sienna terrified, Sienna crying, Sienna writing her last words knowing she would never see him again, knowing he would find out too late. Sharon, inside, broke down completely, sinking onto the couch and sobbing into her hands, while Nick tried to hold their son together even as he battled his own rage. And when Noah finally looked up, eyes red, voice hoarse, he whispered, "I'm going to make him pay. I'm going to expose everything." And Nick, though terrified of what Noah might do, nodded, because he knew the truth. They could no longer run, no longer hide, no longer pretend this was bigger than them. The letter had detonated like a bomb in their family, uncovering secrets, crimes, paternity lies, and threats that connected far deeper than any of them imagined. And as Sharon rejoined them outside, wiping tears but standing firm, she said the sentence that would define everything that came next: "Then we do this together, as a family." And Noah clutched Sienna's letter to his chest, knowing it was both a goodbye and a call to action, the final gift of a woman he loved too late. And as the Newmans stood united under the dark sky, the truth was painfully clear. Sienna's last words weren't just confessions, they were the spark that would ignite a war, and Noah, broken, grieving, furious beyond measure, was ready to burn down the entire world to avenge the woman who died holding the truth he never saw coming. But as Noah stood beneath the dark sky clutching Sienna's letter like a lifeline, the night seemed to vibrate with a tension so sharp it nearly hummed, and he suddenly felt the overwhelming shift inside himself. The moment grief crystallizes into purpose, the moment loss becomes rage powerful enough to change the course of everything. Because Sienna's last words weren't simply revelations, they were marching orders whispered from the grave, and he could practically hear her trembling voice urging him to be braver than he'd ever been. Nick and Sharon watched him with a mixture of fear and heartbreaking compassion, knowing their son was on the verge of a dangerous spiral but also understanding that nothing could pull him back now, not until he uncovered every lie, every threat, every crime connected to the man Sienna had named, the man who had toyed with her life and manipulated her future, the man who played puppet master while she died terrified and alone. And as Noah wiped his face with the back of his trembling hand, he whispered, "We go after him right now." But Sharon gently grabbed his arm, her voice cracking as she said, "Noah, not like this. You can't storm into a war blind, not when he's already hurt Sienna and threatened you." Though even she couldn't hide the flame in her eyes, the fierce maternal rage rising inside her stronger than her fear, because Sharon had lost too many people, endured too many tragedies, and she refused to sit idly by while another enemy set his sights on her family. Nick stepped forward, jaw set in a way Noah recognized from every moment his father had ever gone into battle mode, and said in a low, steady voice, "We do this smart. We do this calculated. We don't give him the chance to strike first." And Noah, breath still uneven, nodded slowly because he knew his father was right, but the fury inside him was clawing at his chest like an animal begging to be released, threatening to consume any sense of logic or caution. So he looked back at the house, at the life he once believed was stable, grounded, real, and felt it crumble under the truth Sienna left behind. When they all walked back inside, the silence in the living room felt hollow, like a space evacuated of innocence, and Sienna's letter lay open on the coffee table, its pages gently shifting as if alive, as if whispering all the horrors she never got the chance to speak. And Noah sat down again, staring at the jagged ink strokes that revealed everything. How the coercion started with a threat disguised as an opportunity, how she was slowly drawn into a plan she didn't understand until it was too late, how the man she trusted turned into her captor, how the truth about the baby's father was used to control her every move, and how her final days were filled with terror because she knew someone was watching her, waiting for the moment she slipped. Sharon, tears still streaking her cheeks, knelt beside Noah and placed a trembling hand over his, whispering, "She didn't want this for you, she wanted you safe, but Noah shook his head, voice hoarse as he replied, she wanted me to know the truth, she wanted someone to stop him, someone to expose him, and Nick, fist still clenched at his sides, added, and we will. But we're going to need more than just a letter. We need evidence. We need allies. We need to hit him where it hurts. Noah exhaled shakily, knowing his father was right but unable to shake the image of Sienna writing this letter with trembling hands, terrified someone might burst into the room at any moment. He could practically see her bent over the table, pen digging into the paper, struggling to record as much as she could before death claimed her, and the thought of her dying alone, thinking he might hate her, thinking she had betrayed him, tore another sob from his chest, one that echoed through the room. Like a wounded animal, Sharon pulled him into her arms and held him tightly, whispering soothing words even though her own voice quivered, and Nick, seeing his son crumble in Sharon's embrace, felt his own heart fracture, because the Newman family had been through countless storms, but this was different, this was personal, this was an attack on Noah's soul, on the memory of a woman who was trying to escape a monster. After what felt like hours, Noah finally stood, wiping his face, and said, we start tonight, because waiting was no longer an option, not with Sienna's warnings echoing in his head, not with the threat hanging over their family like a dagger, and Nick nodded, already pulling out his phone to call someone he trusted, someone who owed him a favor, someone who could access information quietly and quickly, but before he could dial, Noah stopped him, saying, no, this has to stay in the family until we know who we're up against, and Sharon agreed, pointing out that the man Sienna named had influence, connections, and a network of people who would protect him at any cost, meaning any leak, any whisper, could put them in greater danger. They sat around the table, reading the letter line by line, analyzing every detail Sienna left behind, names she hinted at, locations she scribbled down, phrases like the warehouse, the night of the deal, and the files he hid, each clue painting a darker, more disturbing picture of the man they were hunting, and Noah felt the rage boiling in his chest with every new revelation, each piece of the puzzle showing just how trapped Sienna had been, just how deep this criminal's roots ran. Sharon pointed to one line, one that read, he said the cameras were wiped but I saw a backup, it's hidden in the green box. Noah, find it before he does. And although the sentence was rushed and the handwriting nearly illegible, Noah recognized the reference instantly, Sienna's old art studio, the place she had abandoned weeks before her death, claiming it didn't feel safe anymore, and he felt a jolt in his chest as he realized she had left something behind for him, something she hoped he'd be able to find one day. Nick immediately said, then we go to the studio, but Sharon hesitated, terrified that walking into a place connected to Sienna's final days might put them in danger, especially if the man responsible had been watching her movements. But Noah insisted, voice firm, she trusted me to find it. I'm not letting this sit another hour. And so, the three of them left the house, the letter carefully folded into Noah's jacket, its weight symbolic of the responsibility Sienna had placed on his shoulders. The drive to the studio was filled with heavy silence, broken only by Noah's uneven breathing as he replayed every moment he shared with Sienna in his mind, her laughter, her fear, her moments of distant sadness he never understood until now, and each memory burned like fire under his skin. When they arrived, the air felt unnaturally cold, the kind of chill that seeped into bones and made even the bravest heart falter, and Noah's hands trembled as he unlocked the door, stepping into the dark, dusty space that once held Sienna's dreams but now felt like a forgotten tomb. The studio was exactly as she left it, canvases leaning against the walls, brushes scattered across the table, lights unplugged, and paint-stained rags abandoned on the floor. But there was something different, something unsettling, a lingering sense of intrusion, as though someone had been there after her, someone searching for the same thing Noah was now trying to find. Sharon whispered, be careful, as Noah moved toward the shelf where Sienna kept her supplies, searching for the green box mentioned in the letter. But when he found it, tucked behind a stack of unopened canvases, his heart skipped, because the box wasn't closed, it was cracked open, as if someone had already rifled through it, and Nick muttered, we're not alone in this, confirming the terrifying suspicion that whoever threatened Sienna was well aware she left evidence behind. Noah opened the box fully, breath catching when he saw the small flash drive tucked beneath a folded cloth, miraculously untouched, and beside it, a small camera battery, dead but still intact, and Sharon gasped, realizing the significance. If Sienna hid a backup camera, it meant she had footage of something dangerous enough to make her the target of a cover-up, something that could expose the man who fathered her child and orchestrated her downfall. Noah's hands started shaking again as he held the flash drive, feeling as though it pulsed with the truth, with everything Sienna risked her life to protect, and he whispered, voice breaking, "This is it. This is what she died trying to tell me," and despite the fear creeping into his spine, he felt the fire of determination burn brighter, because now he wasn't just honoring Sienna's memory, he was fighting for justice, fighting for the truth, fighting for the family she never got the chance to build. Nick urged them to leave before anyone else showed up, reminding them that if the box had been disturbed, someone was still searching, someone still watching, someone still trying to erase the evidence, and Noah, clutching the flash drive like a lifeline, nodded and followed his parents out, but as they stepped into the night, a car engine roared to life in the distance, headlights flashing briefly before speeding away, and Noah's blood turned to ice, because whoever was following them now knew exactly what they had found. As the Newman family stood beneath the shadowy streetlights, breath heavy, hearts pounding, the stakes had officially shifted, and Noah understood that Sienna's letter wasn't just a confession, it was a warning of a war that had already begun, and now, with the evidence in hand and a target on their backs, they had no choice but to keep fighting, no matter how dangerous the truth might be, no matter what secrets still waited in the darkness, no matter how deeply this criminal's crimes were buried, because Sienna's final words demanded justice, and Noah, broken, furious, grieving beyond repair, was prepared to burn down everything standing between him and the truth. But as Noah stood gripping the flash drive, the weight of Sienna's final plea pulsing through his trembling fingers, the night seemed to constrict around him, the air tightening with an unseen danger that made his pulse throb violently in his neck, and for a moment he wondered if Sienna had felt this same fear, this crushing sense that every shadow hid an enemy, every sound signaled a threat, every second was a countdown to something catastrophic, and that thought alone nearly brought him to his knees. Sharon grasped his arm, her voice barely a whisper as she said, "We need to get somewhere safe, now," but even as she spoke, her eyes darted toward the corner of the street where the mysterious car had sped off, her instinct screaming that whatever hunted Sienna was now hunting them. Nick moved quickly, ushering them toward the car, his voice low and firm as he said, "Nobody separates. Nobody calls anyone. Nobody posts anything. We move quiet," and Sharon, though terrified, nodded because she knew Nick was right. This was no longer a matter of grief or betrayal, this was survival, this was war, and they were already in deeper than they could have imagined. Noah slid into the back seat, gripping the flash drive so tightly it left an imprint in his palm, and as they drove off, he stared out the window at the empty streets, feeling a presence even if he couldn't see it, sensing the eyes that had been watching Sienna now turning toward him, toward the evidence she died trying to preserve, and the rage within him simmered hotter, darker, more dangerous with every passing second. When they arrived home, the silence inside the house felt different, no longer hollow, but charged with urgency, with dread, with the awareness that they were now holding the single piece of proof someone had killed for, and maybe would kill again to retrieve. Nick immediately locked the doors, checked the windows, then motioned for Noah to bring the flash drive to the dining room table, where the letter still lay open like a ghostly presence linking the past and present. Noah plugged the drive into Nick's laptop, and Sharon clutched the back of his chair, bracing herself for whatever they were about to uncover, because Sienna's final days were already horrific enough. What kind of footage had she captured that terrified her into hiding a backup? What truth had she been running from? What crime had she witnessed? And the moment the files loaded, a chill ran through all three of them. The first video thumbnail showed a dim warehouse, exactly like the one Sienna referenced in her letter, and Noah clicked it with a shaking hand, breath catching as the footage began to play, grainy, shaky, clearly recorded in secret, the camera tucked under a crate or maybe inside Sienna's bag, and the audio was muffled but the voices were unmistakable. The man Sienna named as the father, speaking with two men whose faces were hidden but whose intentions were crystal clear. Noah's heart hammered against his ribs as the man spoke about the shipment, the payoff, and Sienna keeping her mouth shut, and Sharon gasped when the man laughed coldly and said, "If she slips up, we fix it permanently," and Nick muttered, "My God, this is bigger than we thought." Because this wasn't just manipulation or threats, this was criminal activity at the highest level, something dangerous enough to explain why Sienna's every move had been watched, controlled, and ultimately silenced. But the footage grew worse, darker, more damning, showing the man bragging about how he handled Sienna when she got nervous, how he kept her in line, how he intended to use her pregnancy to get leverage over someone else if she didn't comply, and Noah's stomach twisted violently as he realized just how deeply Sienna had been trapped, just how much cruelty she